In this video, I'm going to be going over some of the best investing books in 2018. Now, I made a video about this in the past, but I guess it's like an updated version because I've, read through a couple books, and I'm only going to talk about books that I've obviously read myself before, or else I wouldn't really be able to give them a very good review. But anyways, there's 4 books in total. 2 of them I talked about in the past because I still think they're good investing books, and 2 are kind of new ones that I didn't talk about before that I kind of recently read. Now, the first one definitely isn't the best on the list by any means. It's probably the worst one on the list right here, but this one is Stock Investing for Beginners, How to Buy Your First Stock and Grow Your Money by John Roberts. And I didn't know who he was before this. I guess he's like the CEO of some company that I've never heard of. It's like Live and Learn Prosper. It's kind of just an investing company, I guess. But this book, if you Google like investing or stock investing for beginners or something like that on Amazon, it'll be the first book that probably comes up. Now, one thing to note about this book, it is like definitely not the best one I've read, but it's like a decent one for if you know absolutely nothing about investing and you want to like start investing, in a day or something like that, and you want to just get right to it. It's very, very short. It's only it's literally like 70 pages or something like that. So I read it in like a couple of hours. It's not even 70 pages. It's like, if you look at, minus all the resources and introduction and stuff, it's literally 60 pages, and the words on the page, there's not that many words on the pages, and the pages are kind of big. This is what the text actually looks like. And this book is definitely, if you know anything about investing or know the basics to it, like how to set up a brokerage account, how to pick and choose, buy and sell stocks, then this book definitely is not for you. But if you are brand new to investing and have never ever learned anything about it and have no idea what a brokerage is or how stocks work or anything like that, then you could consider getting this one. And it was pretty cheap on Amazon. I think it was only a few bucks, but one thing to note, I think this book is so highly bought on Amazon and is at the top of the search rankings because the author or whoever published it or whatever is probably pretty good at SEO. It's not actually because it's one of the best books out there, but I've had people ask me about this one. That's why I actually bought this one and read it really quickly. But it literally took me, I think, like a half hour to an hour to read it. And all it really talks about is, why invest in stocks, basic information about the stock market, how to find good stocks, which is very, very basic and really doesn't say a whole lot about it. What you need to get started, which I think is kind of helpful, like how to choose a brokerage, but it is slightly outdated. How to buy and sell stocks, which is pretty basic. How to protect your stocks, kind of like diversification, stuff like that. And then that's really it. It doesn't go into depth about anything at all. Each chapter is only a couple of pages, and it's basically more of like a guide than anything than like an actual read. But anyway, so that's this book. I'm going to put the link in the description for all the books as well. So that's the first one, Stock Investing for Beginners. The second one is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and this book's a lot better known than that one. And yes, this specific one doesn't have to do, I guess, specifically with the stock market and investing, but it does have to do with overall personal finance as well as more investing in general, not necessarily in the stock market, but you could apply the same ideas and philosophies of this book. I recently read this book actually, and I just finished it, so that's kind of why I'm making this video as well, because I just finished both these books. And this is definitely one of the best personal finance books out there in general. And why I think this relates to the stock market and investing more is because a lot of people, when they're investing in the stock market, one thing they struggle with is actually coming up with the money or putting aside money to put into their portfolio, which I don't struggle with, and I do a really good job of that. And I definitely don't make a whole lot of money compared to some of these people probably watching this video right now. And I think that I did a lot of stuff that this book talks about beforehand, but this book talks about a lot of good ways to really save money and how to make money work for you and how to get out of the rat race and stuff like that. It goes into a lot more depth than actually just investing, but there's definitely a great read for anyone who's interested in making money or investing in the stock market, or just trying to figure out their personal finance if you're struggling with adding more funds to your portfolio, which a lot of people do. This book is probably the best overall book on this list, just read wise. You don't have to be worried about the stock market to read this. Really, anyone can read this if you have a job or don't want to have your job anymore, or just are interested in how to better have better personal finance, I should say. But anyways, Rich Dad Poor Dad, there's like a couple different versions of it, and I actually like this one the best because it has like little summaries at the end of each chapter, and it has little like write-in things almost, which is kind of cool. So if you're interested in that, definitely buy this specific one. I think again it was only like less than $15. I think it was like 10 or $9 or something like that if you buy the hard copy. So I'll put the link to that in the description as well. Now, the next book I'll be talking about, which I've talked about in the past, and this is probably the best book I think for beginner investors and really any investors, is The Little Book of Common Sense Investing by John C. Bogle. And John C. Bogle is, former CEO, founder of Vanguard Mutual Fund. So he's a really big investor, probably one of the biggest names in the 20th century. Him, Munger, Buffett, probably the top three in my opinion. This book isn't very long. Once again, it's longer than like the other one, but it's only like 200 pages or so. And honestly, the pages are relatively small. It's not like a whole lot of writing like a normal novel or anything like that. So it probably shouldn't take you a whole while to read, but I think this one's really great because it talks more about not necessarily like this other book, like how to invest or like how to start investing, but it talks about when you're actually investing, what's probably the best thing to do with your funds or with your money. Now, one thing to note, John Bogle basically created the mutual fund, which like in the past 10, 20 years or whatever, has probably replaced the index fund for the most part. And in this book, he like widely argues for his fund, well, not necessarily his fund, I guess, but for funds like his. And I think there's a bit of a bias in this book, which is okay. Obviously, I don't think he's necessarily like sold this book or wrote this book to try to make money for his firm, but there's definitely a very, very clear bias. So take note of that while you're reading it. Don't go out and buy Vanguard's fund just because you read this book right away, because that might not necessarily be the best way to invest, or might not be the best way you want to invest. But anyway, still overall a really great book. He kind of shows like what the best way to invest is, not just by saying it, but by adding stories to it and showing a lot of statistical data to kind of back that up. But at the same time, it's not like a textbook. It's a pretty relatively easy read, and I think he does a really good job of basically pretty much saying that there's no chance that you're going to beat the S&P 500, so you might as well buy into the S&P 500 unless you're pretty good at investing. It's kind of saying if you're an average investor, what makes the most sense while investing is simply investing in a fund, which is his. But now with ETFs, they're much lower ratios, and this book was written before the Robinhood app came out. So now with the Robinhood app, you could essentially make your own fund, and same with M1 Finance actually. You could essentially make your own fund without having to pay any expense ratio and without having to like deal with the brokerages, like whether they're active investors or passive investors in their funds, not having to deal with stuff like that. So some of the ideas in this book are like very slightly outdated, like literally to the past year or two, but that's not like a huge deal. I still think it has a lot of good resources and a lot of great information in it. But anyways, moving on to the last book is The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. And this is like the updated edition of it, so that's why it is like insanely long, because there's like commentary sections in this, but you can like totally skip through this. I think they're after every single chapter, but I skipped that. I didn't actually read that because that would just take like an insanely long amount of time. But I mean, this book says it's like 600 pages almost, but in reality it's probably like closer to half of that, so it's not nearly as long as it seems. But I did skim through some of the commentaries, and they're not bad by any means, but I like, obviously the original reading's probably a lot better. Once again, one of the Benjamin Graham, really brilliant investor. It's been, highly praised by other investors as well, like Warren Buffett, Munger, and such. But this book is definitely more of a difficult read than the other three I had there, and it's not necessarily as much like story. Like it is story to it. Like the other ones I kind of like because they integrated stories to it to make it a little bit more of an interest read, so it's not more of a textbook read. But this one is definitely more of a sort of textbook read, not just because honestly the length, and like the other one, the words were kind of bigger and like it was honestly just a quicker read. This one will definitely take a while, but because of that, it probably has a lot more information in it. But if you are reading this, it definitely will take quite a bit longer. I mean, the other ones I only read in like a few days. This one it took me a couple of weeks to read at least. And this is definitely a whole lot more about like value investing and how to actually be a smart investor. And it honestly taught me a whole lot. I think all these books have, but this one information wise about the actual stock market and what stocks to pick and choose. Teaches you a whole lot, and I don't think he has a whole lot of bias in this compared to Bogle's book, but this is really a great read. But this one will definitely take longer, and I would probably consider reading the other two first, especially if you're a beginner investor. This is more about, you got your brokerage account going, you got some stocks to choose, you're buying some stocks, you might not be doing the best, but then you kind of want to figure out, how do I go to that next level of investing, and how do I actually figure out how to focus on, what kind of investor I want to be. But he definitely has an emphasis on value investing versus other investing strategies. I haven't actually read any book ever that was actually good that promoted like growth strategy or like I shouldn't say small cap strategy, but when pretty much most of the books you're going to read about investing are going to promote growth strategy and like dividend investing, more safer routes, and probably the ones that will end up with better returns. But anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Like I said, the links to these books are in the description. Once again, the books that I talked about were The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, the little book of Common Sense Investing by John C. Bogle, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and Stock Investing for Beginners by John Roberts. But anyways, guys, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button and comment below what investing books you've read or what you think about these books if you have read them before. And other than that, if you haven't checked out my channel before, I talk about investing in the stock market and really anything that has to do with money. So if you're interested in anything like that, definitely head over to my channel and consider subscribing. But other than that, guys, thanks for watching.